The FBI under J. Edgar Hoover had been following Oppenheimer since before the war, when he showed communist sympathies as a professor at Berkeley and had been close to members of the Communist Party, including his wife and brother. They strongly suspected that he himself was a member of the party, based on wiretaps in which party members referred to him or appeared to refer to him as a communist, as well as reports from informers within the party. He had been under close surveillance since the early 1940s. His home and office bugged, his phone tapped and his mail opened. The FBI furnished Oppenheimer's political enemies with evidence that intimated communist ties. These enemies included Strauss, an AIC commissioner who had long harbored resentment against Oppenheimer both for his activity in opposing the hydrogen bomb and for his humiliation of Strauss before Congress some years earlier. Strauss had expressed opposition to exporting radioactive isotopes to other nations, and Oppenheimer had called them less important than electronic devices but more important than, let us say, vitamins. On June 7, 1949, Oppenheimer testified before the House Un-American Activities Committee that he had associations with the Communist Party USA in the 1930s. He testified that some of his students, including David Bohm, Giovanni Rossi Lomanitz, Philip Morrison, Bernard Peters, and Joseph Weinberg had been communists at the time they had worked with him at Berkeley. Frank Oppenheimer and his wife Jackie testified before HUAC that they had been members of the Communist Party USA. Frank was subsequently fired from his University of Minnesota position. Unable to find work in physics for many years, he became a cattle rancher in Colorado. He later taught high school physics and was the founder of the San Francisco Exploratorium. The triggering event for the security hearing happened on November 7, 1953, when William Liscombe Borden, who until earlier in the year had been the executive director of the United States Congress Joint Committee on Atomic Energy, sent Hoover a letter saying that, more probably than not J. Robert Oppenheimer is an agent of the Soviet Union. Eisenhower never exactly believed the allegations in the letter, but felt compelled to move forward with an investigation. And on December 3 he ordered that a blank wall be placed between Oppenheimer and any government or military secrets. On December 21, 1953, Strauss told Oppenheimer that his security clearance had been suspended, pending resolution of a series of charges outlined in a letter, and discussed his resigning by way of requesting termination of his consulting contract with the AIC. Oppenheimer chose not to resign and requested a hearing instead. The charges were outlined in a letter from Kenneth D. Nichols, general manager of the AIC. The hearing that followed in April-May 1954, which was held in secret, focused on Oppenheimer's past communist ties and his association during the Manhattan Project with suspected disloyal or communist scientists. It then continued with an examination of Oppenheimer's opposition to the H-bomb and stances in subsequent projects and study groups. A transcript of the hearings was published in June 1954, with some redactions. In 2014, the U.S. Department of Energy made the full transcript public. One of the key elements in this hearing was Oppenheimer's earliest testimony about George Elteton's approach to various Los Alamos scientists. A story that Oppenheimer confessed he had fabricated to protect his friend Hakon Chevalier. Unknown to Oppenheimer, both versions were recorded during his interrogations of a decade before. He was surprised on the witness stand with transcripts of these, which he had not been given a chance to review. In fact, Oppenheimer had never told Chevalier that he had finally named him, and the testimony had cost Chevalier his job. Both Chevalier and Elteton confirmed, mentioning that they had a way to get information to the Soviets. Elteton admitting he said this to Chevalier and Chevalier admitting he mentioned it to Oppenheimer. But both put the matter in terms of gossip and denied any thought or suggestion of treason or thoughts of espionage, either in planning or in deed. Neither was ever convicted of any crime. Teller testified that he considered Oppenheimer loyal to the US government. But that, Uddharan Chenne, in a great number of cases, I have seen Dr. Oppenheimer act. I understand that Dr. Oppenheimer acted in a way which for me was exceedingly hard to understand. I thoroughly disagreed with him in numerous issues and his actions frankly appeared to me confused and complicated. To this extent I feel that I would like to see the vital interests of this country in hands which I understand better, and therefore trust more. In this very limited sense I would like to express a feeling that I would feel personally more secure if public matters would rest in other hands. Teller's testimony outraged the scientific community, and he was virtually ostracized from academic science. Ernest Lawrence refused to testify, pleading an attack of ulcerative colitis. But an interview in which Lawrence condemned Oppenheimer was submitted in evidence. Groves, fearful that the FBI would try to implicate him as part of a cover-up about the Chevalier contact in 1943, also testified against Oppenheimer. Many top scientists, as well as government and military figures, testified on Oppenheimer's behalf. Inconsistencies in his testimony and his erratic behavior on the stand, at one point saying he had given a cock and bull story, and that this was because he was an idiot, convinced some that he was unstable and a possible security risk. Oppenheimer's clearance was revoked one day before it was due to lapse anyway. Rabi commented that Oppenheimer was merely a government consultant at the time anyway, and that if the government didn't want to consult the guy, then don't consult him. During his hearing, Oppenheimer testified willingly on the left-wing activities of many of his colleagues. Had his clearance not been stripped, he might have been remembered as someone who named names to save his own reputation. But as it happened, he was seen by most in the scientific community as a martyr to McCarthyism, an eclectic liberal who was unjustly attacked by warmongering enemies, symbolic of the shift of scientific work from academia into the military. Wernher von Braun told a congressional committee in England, Oppenheimer would have been knighted. In a seminar at the Wilson Center in 2009. Based on an extensive analysis of the Vasilyev notebooks taken from the KGB archives. John Earl Haynes, Harvey Clare and Alexander Vasilyev confirmed that Oppenheimer never was involved in espionage for the Soviet Union, though Soviet intelligence tried repeatedly to recruit him. Further, he had several persons removed from the Manhattan Project who had sympathies to the Soviet Union. Haynes, Clare and Vasilyev also state Oppenheimer was, in fact, a concealed member of the CPUSA in the late 1930s. According to biographer Ray Monk, he was, in a very practical and real sense, a supporter of the Communist Party. Moreover, in terms of the time, effort and money spent on party activities, he was a very committed supporter. On December 16, 2022, United States Secretary of Energy Jennifer Granholm vacated the 1954 revocation of Oppenheimer's security clearance. Her statement said, in 1954, the Atomic Energy Commission revoked Dr. Oppenheimer's security clearance through a flawed process that violated the Commission's own regulations. As time has passed, more evidence has come to light of the bias and unfairness of the process that Dr. Oppenheimer was subjected to, while the evidence of his loyalty and love of country have only been further affirmed. Uddharan Chenne